I need to tell you something. When I first learned about retiring with a pension in this country, I got it completely wrong. Not slightly wrong, completely wrong. I spent years thinking one thing, while the reality was something else entirely. And the strange part? Almost everyone with a pension makes the same mistake I did. Hit subscribe if you want the stuff nobody tells you, because I have a lot more where this came from. Everyone tells you that having a pension means you're set, that you're the lucky one, that you can finally relax because the hard part is handled. But here's what they've gotten backwards. It's not about having the pension. It's about understanding what your pension is actually doing for you, what it isn't doing, and what decisions you have to make before it ever sends you a single check. Because here's the truth most people don't want to say out loud. A pension is one of the most powerful tools you can carry into retirement, but it's also one of the most misunderstood. And if you walk into your retirement without really knowing how yours works, you can leave a tremendous amount of money, security, and peace of mind on the table. Not because you did anything wrong, but because nobody ever sat you down and walked you through the 4 things that actually matter. So that's what we're going to do today, together. Like 2 friends sitting across from each other with a cup of coffee, finally getting clear on something that's been quietly shaping your future this whole time. Let me start with something that might sound obvious, but really isn't. Most people walk into retirement looking at the wrong asset. They look at their savings, their investments, their accounts, and those matter absolutely. But there's another asset hiding in plain sight, one that most people with a pension never properly value. It's the income that doesn't depend on the market. The money that shows up whether the stock market is up or down, whether the economy is roaring or struggling, whether you feel good that morning or not. Most people who have a pension have far more of this kind of asset than they realize. They just don't know how to see it. Think about it this way. If a stranger walked up to you and offered you a contract that promised to pay you a set amount of money every single month for the rest of your life, you would treat that contract like gold. You'd ask questions. You'd read every line. You'd want to know exactly what you were getting. But when that same kind of contract comes from your employer in the form of a pension, most people just glance at the number and move on. They don't dig into what the number really means. They don't ask the right questions. And that's where the trouble starts. So here are the 4 things you need to know if you're retiring with a pension in the US. 4 things that, once you understand them, will change the way you look at your entire retirement picture. Not because the math gets harder, but because the picture finally gets clear. The first thing you need to know is the choice that will quietly shape the rest of your life, the single life option versus the joint and survivor option. And I know that sounds technical, but stay with me because this might be the most important financial decision you make in your 60s. Here's the situation. When you retire with a pension, you're usually given a choice. You can take a higher monthly check that stops the day you die, or you can take a smaller monthly check that keeps paying your spouse, often at 50% or 75% or 100% of what you were getting for the rest of their life. On paper, this looks like a math problem. The higher number looks better. The lower number looks like you're giving something up. And that's exactly where most people get it wrong, because this isn't a math problem. It's a life problem. Imagine your retirement finances like a thermostat in your home. Some parts of your financial picture act like the thermostat. They keep the temperature steady, no matter what's happening outside. Social Security, pensions, fixed annuities, these are your thermostat features. They keep things stable. Other parts of your finances act like opening a window. They're exposed to what's happening outside. Your investment account, your stock holdings, when the market gets crazy, these feel it. Now here's what most people don't think about. When you choose the single life option, you're setting that thermostat for one person. The day you're gone, the thermostat shuts off for your spouse. And if your spouse is sitting in that house 10 or 15 or 20 years later, depending on a Social Security check that just got cut roughly in half because the higher earner passed away, things can get cold fast. The fear doesn't come from not having enough. It comes from not knowing what you have. And when one spouse passes and the other suddenly realizes the pension stopped, that fear becomes very real, very fast. I'm not telling you which option to choose. I can't. Your situation is yours. Maybe your spouse has their own strong pension. Maybe there's a large life insurance policy that's paid up and ready. Maybe one of you has serious health concerns that change the calculation. The point isn't the answer. The point is that this is a decision you make once. And once you make it, you generally can't undo it. So you need to walk into that decision with eyes wide open, looking at what life actually looks like for both of you, not just the person whose name is on the pension. Here's something to remember. The goal isn't a big number. The goal is a steady life. Keep that with you as we continue. Now let's talk about the second thing you need to know, and this one catches more retirees off guard than almost anything else. It's the question of whether your pension has a cost of living adjustment. And if you don't know the answer to that question off the top of your head right now, that's okay. You're not alone. Most pension recipients have no idea. Here's why this matters so much. The number on your pension statement looks like a fixed amount of income, but the cost of your life is not fixed. The cost of groceries is not fixed. The cost of gas, electricity, property taxes, prescriptions, the simple price of going out to lunch on a Tuesday, none of that is fixed. And if your pension doesn't grow with inflation, then every year that goes by, that same check buys you a little less. Think about planning your retirement expenses like making a grocery list. You could make a list based on what you think you should be eating, all the healthy stuff, the premium items, the aspirational groceries. Or you could make a list based on what you actually eat, what you actually throw away, what actually makes it onto the table. Most retirement planning uses the aspirational list. But the real budget, that's based on the actual list. And when you use the real list, the number you need is often surprisingly different from the one everyone throws around. But here's what's tricky. That real list doesn't stay still. It changes, slowly, quietly, year after year. And if your pension stays still while your life keeps getting more expensive, you start eating into your savings faster than you planned. Not because you did anything wrong, but because nobody warned you that your pension was a fixed dollar in a world that doesn't stand still. Most government pensions have some form of cost of living adjustment. Many private pensions do not. Some have a partial adjustment, capped at a certain percentage. Some only adjust under certain conditions. The information you need isn't complicated. It's just different from what you've been told. So the work for you, before you sign anything, is to call your plan administrator and ask one direct question. Does my pension increase over time? And if so, how? Write down the answer. Read it twice. Because the answer to that one question is going to shape 30 years of your life. This isn't about optimism. It's about accuracy. If your pension has a cost of living adjustment, you can lean on it more heavily. If it doesn't, you need to plan your other money to fight inflation harder because your pension is going to need help over time. Either way, you can plan, but only if you know. I want you to hold on to this thought. Most people are not broke. They're just confused. There's a big difference. That brings us to the third thing you need to know, and this is where the math gets really interesting. Most retirees with pensions never sit down and really do the math on what's called the lump sum versus monthly annuity decision. And many companies are now offering this choice. They'll say, you can take your pension as a check every month for life, or you can take a one-time lump sum, roll it into an IRA, and manage it yourself. That lump sum number is usually big, bigger than any single check you've ever seen in your life. And the moment you see it, something happens in your brain. You start to think, well, that's a lot of money. I could invest that. I could grow that. I could leave it to my kids. And maybe you can, but here's where the math gets interesting. Most people do their retirement calculations completely backwards. They start with how much they've saved, then try to figure out if it's enough. But the real calculation should start with your life. What does it actually cost to live the way you want? Then work backwards to see what supports it. Because when you do the math this way, something surprising happens. The target moves, and it's often closer than you think. So when somebody offers you a lump sum, the right question isn't, can I beat the pension's return? The right question is, can I reliably create the same monthly income from this lump sum for the rest of my life, plus survive any market storms along the way, plus protect against my own decisions when I get older and maybe less sharp than I am now? Because that's what the pension is doing for you. Every single month. Quietly, without you having to lift a finger. Imagine you're standing outside and someone offers you 2 umbrellas. One umbrella is small but reliable. It covers you in light rain, it won't break, it works every time. The other umbrella is huge, flashy, covers a massive area, but it only works when the weather is perfect. In a storm, it flips inside out. In bright sun, it's awkward and gets in the way. Most people grab the big umbrella because it looks impressive. But the person who chose the small, reliable umbrella, they're the one who stays dry. Your pension is your reliable umbrella. The lump sum, sitting in an account exposed to market swings, can be the flashy one that sometimes fails you. Now, I want to be fair because there are situations where the lump sum makes sense. If the company funding your pension is in serious financial trouble, if you have a shorter expected lifespan due to health issues and no surviving spouse to protect, if you have such substantial other guaranteed income that you genuinely don't need the pension as a stabilizer, these situations exist and they're real, but they're the exception, not the rule. For most retirees, the steady monthly check is doing more work for you than you realize in a way that's very hard to replicate once you let it go. Think of your retirement money like a river. When the river is moving forward, it's easy to think you don't need to pay attention to the current. But here's what happens. If you hit a rough patch early in retirement, if the market dips right when you start drawing down, that early damage can be hard to recover from. It's like the river. A strong current early on can push you far off course, even if things smooth out later. That's why the timing of your early withdrawals matters more than most people realize. Not because you did anything wrong, but because the sequence of your returns matters enormously. A pension protects you from that. A lump sum doesn't. Before we move on, if you're feeling something shift in how you think about this, that's exactly what's supposed to happen. Stay with me. Now, for the fourth thing you need to know, and this is the one that quietly costs retirees the most money. Most people walk into retirement with a pension and have no idea how their pension interacts with everything else. Specifically with Social Security, specifically with taxes, specifically with their other savings. And these three things, working together or working against each other, will shape the actual amount of money you get to keep every month. Let's talk about Social Security first. If you've spent your career in a job covered by Social Security, your pension and your Social Security work side by side. They stack on top of each other. But if you spent any part of your career in certain government or public sector jobs that didn't pay into Social Security, there have historically been rules that reduced your Social Security check because of your other pension. Those rules have shifted in recent years, and the landscape has changed for many public workers. So if you worked any part of your career as a teacher, firefighter, police officer, federal worker, or in any role where Social Security wasn't taken out of your paycheck, you need to look at this very carefully. Don't assume. Don't guess. Pull your statement, talk to your plan administrator, and understand exactly how your benefits work together under the rules that apply right now. Then there's the tax side. Most pensions are taxed as ordinary income at the federal level. Some states tax pensions. Some states don't. Some states tax them partially. Some states give big breaks to retirees. And where you choose to live in retirement, especially if you're thinking about moving to be closer to grandkids or to a warmer climate, can make a real difference in how much of your pension actually lands in your pocket each month. You don't need to be wealthy to be secure. You need to be informed. And being informed about taxes is one of the easiest ways to add real dollars to your retirement without earning a penny more. Then there's how your pension affects what you pull out of your other savings. Here's something most people never think about. If your pension and Social Security together cover your essential expenses, your housing, your food, your utilities, your insurance, your basic life, then your IRA and your other retirement accounts can play a completely different role. They don't have to be your survival money. They can be your flexibility money, your travel money, your help the grandkids money, your unexpected medical money. They can sit there, growing, ready, without you having to drain them on a fixed schedule that puts you at the mercy of the market. That's the real magic of a pension. It changes what your other money has to do. It changes the job description of every dollar you've saved. Here's why this matters. Once you see the full picture, the decisions become clearer and the fear gets smaller. Let me paint a picture that sounds familiar. You're someone who's been diligent. You've put in your years. You've shown up to work. You've earned that pension through decades of effort. And now you're looking at the numbers and something doesn't feel right. The pension is respectable. Social Security looks decent. Your friends would say you're doing well. But inside, there's a nagging feeling that something is missing. You're not sure if it's enough. You don't feel the peace you expected. Sound familiar? This is where most careful pensioners end up, with a number that looks good on paper, but doesn't feel secure in real life. Or maybe your situation is different. Maybe you've had a long career with one employer, maybe some bumps along the way, maybe not as much in your personal savings as you'd like. But here's what you might have that nobody's counting for you. A pension that pays for life, years of Social Security contributions, maybe a paid-off home, maybe a spouse with their own benefits. Your situation doesn't look like the success stories in the magazines. But when you look at the actual monthly income picture, it might look a lot stronger than you think. You might be closer than you think, but you won't know until you look at the right numbers. The difference between stress and peace isn't the size of your account. It's whether you understand what your income actually looks like. And here's the shift that changes everything. Stop thinking about retirement as an end point. Start thinking about it as a transition into something different. Different rhythm, different income, different priorities. And once you see it as a transition, the planning becomes clearer, the decisions become simpler, and the fear that comes from uncertainty, it starts to fade. Because here's the thing about people who retire with pensions. You already have something most Americans don't have. According to data that's been published year after year, only a small slice of private sector workers in this country still have access to a traditional pension. You are in a group that gets smaller every year. And while that's sad in many ways for the country, for you personally, it means your situation has built-in advantages that you need to recognize, value, and protect. It's not about doing more. It's about understanding more. I want you to notice, are you starting to see this differently? That shift is exactly what we're going for here. Now, there are a few more things I want to gently weave in before we close, because they affect every pensioner I've ever talked to, even if they don't realize it. Healthcare. Once you retire, especially if you retire before 65, you have a gap between when your work coverage ends and when Medicare kicks in. Some pensions, especially government ones, come with retiree health benefits that bridge that gap. Many do not. So part of knowing your pension is knowing what it does and doesn't cover for your health. Because health costs are the one expense in retirement that can grow faster than almost anything else, quietly, year after year. You don't have to map every dollar, but you do need to know roughly what kind of cushion you'll need and where that cushion is coming from. Housing. If your home is paid off, you have something incredibly valuable. Not just a place to live, but a fixed cost of living that doesn't move much. Your property taxes might go up. Your insurance might go up, but your mortgage doesn't because there isn't one. That changes the math. If you still have a mortgage going into retirement, that's a real factor in whether your pension covers your monthly life. And if you're thinking about downsizing, selling, or moving, those decisions tie directly back to how steady your pension is and how much room it gives you to make changes without panic. Inflation. We talked about this with the cost of living adjustment, but it goes deeper. Even a low rate of inflation, sustained over 20 or 30 years of retirement, can quietly cut the buying power of a fixed pension significantly. So even if your pension feels comfortable today, you need to ask what it'll feel like 15 years from now. The information you need isn't complicated. It's just different from what you've been told. And then there's the concept of the retirement income gap. This is simply the difference between what your guaranteed income brings in each month and what your real life costs each month. If your pension plus Social Security covers everything, your gap is zero, and your savings is pure flexibility. If your guaranteed income covers 70%, your gap is 30%, and your savings has a defined job. That gap is the most useful number in your entire retirement plan, and most people never calculate it. The real question isn't how much, it's how steady. Most retirement calculators give you a range, not a certainty. They give you a best case, a middle case, and a worst case, and that range is often wider than people realize. The 4% rule that gets talked about everywhere? It's a starting point, not a finish line. It was never designed to be a guarantee. It was a guideline based on historical data that may or may not apply to the next 30 years. So when somebody waves a number at you and tells you that's what you need, take it with a grain of salt. The real number is your number, and your number depends on your gap, your pension, your Social Security, your taxes, your housing, your health, and your life. Peace of mind isn't a luxury. It's a legitimate retirement goal. I want to ask you something. Have you ever thought about what retirement would feel like if you actually trusted your numbers? Keep that question in your mind, because we're about to make that more possible. Here's something that might surprise you. The number you need might be lower than you think, but you'll only believe that if you see why. And the only way to see why is to do the simple exercise I'm about to walk you through. Now, here's what I want you to do with this information. Take this home with you tonight. First, write down every source of income you have coming in each month, no matter how small. Pension, Social Security, any rental income, any annuity, anything that shows up automatically without you doing anything. Add those up. That's your floor. That's your foundation. That's the thermostat we talked about. Second, look at the last 3 months of your actual spending. Not what you budget for, what you actually spent. Pull your bank statement, pull your credit card statement, and add it up. Average those 3 months. That's your real number, not your aspirational number, not your fantasy number. Your real number, based on the real grocery list of your life. Third, subtract your floor from your real number. Whatever's left over, that's what needs to come from your savings each month. Now here's the key. Don't compare that to some massive target number you heard somewhere. Compare it to what you actually have. Look at your retirement accounts and any other savings you have. Ask yourself if those accounts can reliably produce that gap amount every month for the next 20 or 30 years. Not spectacularly, not with home runs, reliably. If they can, you might be in better shape than you realized. If they can't, now you know exactly what to work on. Maybe it's a part-time something for a few years. Maybe it's a small change in spending. Maybe it's reconsidering when to claim Social Security. Maybe it's a conversation with a fee-only advisor who can look at your full picture. But now you have something nobody gave you before, a clear picture of where you actually stand. Most people never discover this because nobody tells them where to look. And here's what happens when you do this exercise. The fog starts to lift. You stop carrying around this vague worry that you're not enough, that you didn't save enough, that you're going to run out. Because the math either supports your peace or it tells you exactly what to fix. Either way, you walk forward instead of standing still. When you understand your income, when you understand your expenses, when you understand what your savings is actually supposed to do, something changes. The uncertainty doesn't disappear, but it shrinks. You stop chasing abstract numbers and start focusing on concrete decisions. And that's the shift that matters. From confusion to clarity, from fear to confidence, from wondering if you're doing enough to knowing exactly where you stand. Because once you know where you stand, you can make decisions. And once you can make decisions, you can move forward. And that's what retirement planning is really about. Not perfection, but progress. You came in here maybe wondering if you were doing something wrong. Maybe wondering if you were behind, if you were missing something, if having a pension was enough. And here's what I hope you're leaving with. The answer isn't always to do more. Sometimes the answer is to understand more, to look at what you actually have, to build on what's working, to make decisions from a place of clarity instead of anxiety, to finally see that your pension isn't just a number on a statement, it's a foundation. And on that foundation, you can build a retirement that feels good, not just looks good on paper. Feels good, and that matters just as much. You have more than you think. You just needed to see it the right way. And now you can. If this gave you a clearer picture of your retirement, subscribe. The next one goes even further.